Well, it's 4 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the first session of our Oregon Ag Chat series. My name is Layla Graves, and I'm the Career Development Coordinator for the Oregon FFA Association. Tonight, our topics are Proficiencies, Agri-Science Fair, Chapter Books, and National Chapter Awards. And we realize that each of these topics could be separated into their own presentation. So with the limited time we have this evening, we're going to focus mostly on Proficiency Awards. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I think this is the right one. Can y'all see that? Yes? Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, so I've already introduced myself, so I'll go into our agenda for tonight. We're going to start with introductions because we have some guests here with us. Then we'll move on to state due dates and move through the proficiency application tips that will be presented by our National FFA Education Specialist, Brett Evans. After that, we'll leave time for any questions you may have for Brett about Proficiency Awards, but I've also invited our Insight Proficiency gurus, Kathy Mayfield and JD Kant. So they'll be around to answer any state-related questions, and I also will be joining on that. And then I've invited our agri-science in-state guru, Joe Mayer of Tillamook Bay Community College, to help answer any questions related to agri-science. And then we can also collectively answer any questions related to national chapter and chapter books. And if needed, we can always continue with another session on each of these topics individually. Okay, so with that, let's get started. And first I want to point to the screen here. You can find all of this information on due dates in the Google Drive. And if you just click on that link, and I'm sure we'll have a folder for this PowerPoint at some point where you can click and get back to all this information. So for state proficiency awards, all the district advisors will submit a list of district winners by February 27th. And then on February 28th, the applications will be submitted electronically through AET by 5 p.m. Okay, and then we have an instructional video of how to do that from AET that can help walk you through that. And then when you get to state convention, there'll be a check-in station at the registration desk through Thursday afternoon and evening. Moving on, and if you have any questions, Lee will be monitoring our chat for us, so you can jump in and ask questions there, and we'll try to answer them as they come up. Due dates for Agri-Science Fair. So February 24th, complete registration for Agri-Science Fair, and I have a link here for you for the form. And then February 28th, applications will be submitted electronically through AET. Again, another link for a video to watch on how to do that. Same as Proficiencies, on the 16th, you can come in and start just setting up your display boards through Thursday afternoon, or you can do it Friday morning in the South Sisters. And there's more information on Agri-Science Fair from the National FFA website. So moving on to chapter books, same due date, February 27th, district advisors will submit a list of district winners, and each district may select 2 books in an area. There's no sectional contest, and you can check in on the 16th of March at state convention through the registration desk, again through Thursday afternoon and evening. Just a note here that the technology scrapbooks must fit on a flash drive and may not exceed 10 minutes, or they will lose 50 points per every 30 seconds over the time limit. And they must be submitted in PowerPoint form or media player form. All right, and I know I'm moving through this kind of fast, but I want to leave lots of room for questions at the end so we can go through this again once we're done with the complete presentation. But for National Chapter Awards, Lee sent out an email today to you all saying that if you wanted to be considered for Superior Chapter, then you need to have your chapter POA budget turned in by December 1st and your National Chapter form by the 31st of January. Okay, and then all those that are able to do that in a timely manner will receive the Superior Chapter Award on stage during convention. And once again, on March 16th, you can come to our check-in station at State Convention and submit your National Chapter Award application. Oh, maybe that's not true. Well, here's more information about the National Chapter Awards. All right. So I'm going to move on and pass it on to Brett Evans, who is our educational specialist from National FFA, who's going to give you some tips and tricks on applications for Proficiency Awards.
Well, thank you, and good evening to everyone. I'm going to absolutely hang around to the end for questions, but as we're going through here, if you have a question specifically about what we're talking about at the time, I am more than happy to be interrupted, and unless Layla and Lee don't want to do it that way, but I'm happy to answer questions as we go as well. Layla, if you'll jump to the first slide.
Sure thing.
So this is what I'm going to cover tonight, and I'm going to move fairly rapidly, again, because I want to leave time for questions. So don't be afraid to say, whoa, 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 stop, explain that. Just help me make sure that I'm giving you what you need. But this is what we're going to cover tonight. And we've got a slide for each one of these. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll pop to the next one. So I get this question from ag teachers. Hey, I'm starting my application, or I'm helping kids start applications. What do I need to do? Like, well, you're 2 or 3 years behind the game. For the best applications, you need to be helping kids when they're first starting, set up a good SAE project. Match their career goals, their interests. I know I'm living in a perfect world, and I know how this works. Hey, my family already has pigs. Great. We're going to raise pigs, but I have zero interest in pigs. I want to be a landscape architect. You know, in a perfect world, let's get them on a project in landscaping. Let's get them something that they actually want to move to, so that this is not just a competition, it's an educational experience. Again, I totally understand, you know, when kids are picking SAEs, lots of times it's what's handy and what's available. But you as teachers, try to steer them into something that matches their actual career goals and interests. It is really important to set good goals and expectations up front. I strongly recommend an SAE agreement. It is so much easier a couple of years into the project to be able to go back and fill out the proficiency application if you already have these things in place. You should be looking long-term. Proficiency applications are not designed for 1-year kid. This whole program is designed to show growth over years. We'll talk about the minimum of 2 years, but again, the better quality applications, you're looking at least 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 years is better. I know each school is different. Some of you don't start until they're in 10th grades. We have other states that are now, with the new constitutional amendments, we're going to have kids with records starting back in 6th grade. So the more years you've got, again, assuming it's on the same project and that it's continually improving. I don't know where your state is or what your state is doing with SAE for All. That is not a national FFA program. That is a council program, but we are doing our best as we adapt applications to incorporate the SAE for All guidelines. Next year's application, you'll see quite a bit of it. So just for a future tip, as you're planning those, be looking at SAE for All, be looking at what they require in there, and you'll be better prepared for applications in the future. And the most obvious is keep good records. People, it is super obvious when we're looking at applications and all of them are nice round numbers. Like, yeah, I worked 100 hours last year. And every number in there is a nice round 100, 150, 200. It's pretty dang obvious that there's lots of guesstimating and estimating going on, and judges are not impressed. So keep good records. Okay, stay current. Some of you have been, and you have some advisors that are really good at proficiency awards in your state. Some of you have been doing this for years and years and years. If you're still using descriptions from years ago, you're hurting your kids. These descriptions, we look at them yearly. I have a committee made up of teachers and state staff from across the nation. We look at the descriptions yearly. We update them. We announce those updates to state staff. So anything that we changed for the 23, we told states about back in June, July. So don't be panicking that we've changed something on you at this point. But this coming June, July, we'll be telling you about changes for 24. So these changes have already been made. Anything that you've been looking at, since school started this year, you're current. But if you're back a year, there are 4 or 5 areas that we made some changes to. So please make sure you're using the most current descriptions, and they're always available there on the Agricultural Proficiency Award webpage. Minimum requirements can change. The rubrics can change. All of those will impact your applications. And again, we'll talk about some of those minimums in a minute. Next slide, please. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter how good the project is. It doesn't matter how good the application is. If it doesn't meet AF&R standards, it's going to be rated a participant. You could have the greatest sewing project and be making millions off your sequin Barbie doll clothes. And I'm not making fun of that. That's a great business, whatever. If it doesn't fit the award area description, we are not presenting an award for it. I am more than happy to talk with people about how to change projects, how to adapt projects so they can fit. If you've got a kid, I had one the other day, kid is super interested in photography, wanted to know if they took pictures of birds and were selling them on greeting cards, what award area that would fit in. Well, it won't. We don't have an award area for greeting cards. What we do have an award area is for taking those pictures, turning them into curriculum, or submitting them to websites, or selling them as part of identification programs, or working with state or local government agencies where they can use those interest in birds and photography skills. So just because a kid has an interest that's kind of out there, don't write them off, but also help them understand that if they don't fit a category, do stuff locally, great, absolutely. And lots of states have some award areas that we don't have at nationals. But just help them understand that if they want to receive a national award, they have to fit the national descriptions. Again, we come up with what does and doesn't qualify by using the national AF&R standards. And I know not every state uses those. Many states have their own. At the national level, we have to use the national standards because we need to tell all of you what we're using. I can't tell you to match the Illinois standards, and you don't know what the Illinois standards are. So we use the national standards so that whether you use those in your state or not, you at least know what book we're playing out of. So love them or hate them, just know that those are the standards we use. Next slide, please. This is one of the, it sounds silly, but this is a common error we see in proficiency applications. Pick the right type of application. Kids, entrepreneurship is, the kid owns it. And really start pounding on that kid. Who owns that horse or that land or whatever? And if it really belongs to mom or dad, well, then let's get it in the right category. If dad pays all the expenses, but you ride that horse, so I'm going to pick on horses because they're super easy. But, if that horse is sold, if I don't get the check, it's not mine. So really help kids understand, not do they own, whether they think it's theirs or not, but do they actually own it? Placement, I work for somebody else. Biggest thing here is kids and oftentimes teachers have a hard time identifying who the employer is. Let's talk about ag communications. We see lots of applications. The kid may be doing things for the chapter. And there are things that will qualify in ag communications. Well, I had a great question. I did one of these in Tennessee the other day. And they said, okay, we have a young lady that has her own blog, agricultural blog. She owns it. It's all her content. She creates it. And she does stuff for the chapter. Where does it fit? Well, it's a terrific example of this combined area. She had an entrepreneurship portion. She owned the blog. She owned the content. She owned the equipment, everything about it she owned. And you can't record unpaid hours for that. You've got to record that as an entrepreneurship project. But then she also worked for the chapter as the employer, and the chapter or the chapter advisor functioned as her employer. So she had both an entrepreneurship project, which she was able to report, here's the number of podcasts I did. I haven't seen the actual application. They were just asking me about this. But, she could report if she'd sold that, if she'd, received royalties from it, or even if she'd just done it. The fact that she's created them, there's now intellectual property that she owns. But she can't claim unpaid hours for stuff that she owns. So again, kids a lot of times they want to put everything in as unpaid hours, especially if they lost money. Unpaid hours don't qualify if the kid owns the project. Research is obviously I'm doing research on it, I'm experimenting or I'm inventing. And again, those can be entrepreneurship or placement. That we both mostly record those by hours, but it's possible to own a research project. So think hard about making sure you're choosing the correct project type. I tell you, the number one thing that I see judges and their death on this, and I totally agree with them. We have a placement project, and every other word the kid says, my cows, my corn, my tractor. But they're claiming it all as a placement project. Well, you've told the judge it's placement, you're recording paid or unpaid hours, but every other word you're telling the judge you own it. Those applications do not score well. Help kids understand that if it's mine, that means I own it. If it's you write it, but somebody else owns it, make sure you explain that. Next slide, please. The next big one is get the right award area. And proficiency awards they can be frustrating sometimes. I describe it as you have kids with SAE projects, and that's multiple, and that's one big pie. Proficiency awards are a slice. We are only looking at that narrow area. So if you need to look at the descriptions and see what goes where. Just because it says, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good one. Grain production is a perfect one. Kid raises corn. Which area does it go in? Does it go in grain production? Does it go in oil crop production? Or does it go in vegetable production? Well, it can go in any one of those depending on what they tell us. If they're, in Oregon, I know, at least in Eastern Oregon, I know you have lots of dry farms, just like I grew up in Arizona and Utah. You're growing mostly grain corn. Great, it goes in grain production. But then you also have the kid with the 3 acres of sweet corn that they're selling through a roadside stand. Well, that goes in vegetable production. The only way to know that is to make sure you very carefully read those award descriptions. We're not trying to be confusing. What we're trying to do is provide as many opportunities as possible for kids to fit in somewhere. But the flip side of that is it can be confusing. So, and I see this happen all the time. A teacher will call me afterwards, and the kid received a participant rating, and they'll quote one line out of an award description. And I'll say, did you read the next sentence? Well, it says right here that da-da-da-da-da. Read the next sentence. There's a note that specifically says in bold letters, what you just did doesn't qualify here. Or what you're proposing qualifies in another area. So always, and make kids do this because it's not on your head. The kid needs to make a decision. Get them to read the whole description and read every paragraph that they could even be close to. Wildlife production, grain production, lots of these, if they're producing certified seed, does that go in grain production or does it go in specialty crop? Well, read both of those to make sure. So I know read, that's a dirty word for kids. I get it, but it's really important because again, super quality application, great project in the wrong area. It's a participant. You just waste it. I hope you learned something. I very much hope that happened, but you're not going to get an award for it, and you very well could have. Easy thing to mess up on. I think I've hammered that. Okay, here's another, and these are, again, common things that we see in applications that really get them dinged. Be germane. If you're applying in diversified crop, don't tell me about your sheep. It doesn't go in the area. I know you raise them. That's great. But for the area that we're looking at, in this case, diversified crop, every time you tell us about your sheep, you're getting a deduction. Every sentence that you use to tell us about something that's not germane to that area, we're deducting for. If you use a whole paragraph to tell us, you're getting 0 points for that paragraph. We will keep it and score it. If any part of that application fits the area, we keep it in. But your score is going to be terrible because every time you tell me about sheep, you've lost points. Ag mechanics is another very common one. Hey, I work at this shop. I'm repairing tractors. I'm doing maintenance. Oh, and by the way, I also help the owner work on their antique Cadillac. And here's 3 pictures of that antique Cadillac at the back of the application and telling us all about this cool stuff they did. Great. None of that gets points. Okay. So you get 0 on all 3 of those pictures. You get 0 every time you're talking about something that's not germane to that area. Research is another really common one. Kids will do research on their own animals, which is totally fine. But instead of just sticking to telling us about the research, they'll also tell about, oh, here's the efficiency factor I got, and here's how I bred my animals, stuff that they're not researching. They're telling us about raising the animals. Again, if you're doing a research project, all we want to know is about the research. We don't want to know about you raising or marketing the animals. This should make it easier to write, but lots of time, and I hear teachers go, well, we want to show that these are well-rounded. That's not proficiencies. Proficiency, that's STAR Awards. Proficiencies are you proficient in the area that you've applied in? And that's what we want to know about, so that we can compare oranges to oranges and apples to apples. Perfect. Lee and Layla and I were laughing about this previously. When you're writing applications, and I keep saying you, I mean your kids, okay? Get them to understand that they're not handing it to their mother to read. When we score these, we do our very best to provide judges from all 4 regions of the country. And I guarantee you, if you send an application and all you do is say, we dry farm wheat, and some guy from Indiana is scoring it, they have no idea what dry farming is. And I know, I moved here from Utah. I know all about dry farming. And here, you know what they do? They have drainage businesses where they take water out of the fields. Blew my mind. Remember, you have judges that are scoring these from across the country. That's on purpose, so that those judges we have judges from your area. We also have judges from others. Don't assume judges know things. Don't assume they know what the Piggly Wiggly is. It's a grocery store in the South, by the way. Don't assume people know these things. Be clear, be descriptive, but also be concise. When you're a proficiency judge at the national level, you're going to score somewhere between 20 and 40 applications. If you, and this is the most common thing, that first question, how did you start this SAE? If I have to read 3/4 of the way through that paragraph, all about how your great-great-grandfather came across the plains and established this ranch and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm 3/4 of the way through the paragraph before I get that, oh, you work for Grandpa fixing his tractor. Okay, I'm now very annoyed. I don't care what Grandpa did. I don't care what your parents did. I only care what you did. Now, if you want to say, hey, it's a family farm and I was interested because this is what I want to do, great. I work on the farm. Tell me right off, tell that judge clearly and early, what is the project? You know, I restore tractors, I maps, I do soil sampling, whatever the case is. Don't make me read 3/4 of that paragraph and then still kind of be wondering what the project is. If I have a judge who's had to flip to the pictures and they're still trying to figure out what your project is, I guarantee your score is not great. So be clear, be concise, and don't assume people know what you're talking about. Explain what you're talking about. Next, please. There we go. Again, as part of explaining things, if you have, and to the kid, and probably to you as the teacher, it's not weird. But I'll give an example. I floored the Tennessee people with this. You guys have junior livestock programs. It's probably not that unusual for you. But here's a young man. He's got 1 steer per year, and he's doing show cattle. Well, 1 year, he's got a $10,000 income off 1 steer. Well, if I'm a judge and that kid hasn't told me anything, I'm like, bullcrap, no steer's worth 10 grand. Oh, you explained to me that, oh, you were the grand champion at the county fair and the sponsors were that year were particularly generous. Okay, now I believe you. Before I thought maybe you made a couple 0 error typo, right? We work with judges and we tell them, believe what's in the application. We're not here to do detective work. The teacher signed it. The parents signed it. The state staff have signed it. You know, just take them at face value. But they're people. Anything that's weird. Here's the other most common one. Here's a great project. Kids made some money. They've got all these animals or all these products, and there's no expenses. Well, the kid knows that I work for dad for the wheat harvest, and dad gives me the steer, but the application's in beef. So all you're going to tell me about is the steer. Well, how'd you pay for it? You need to explain things like that of, hey, I have a trade with my father. This is what I do. Here's a case where it's like, I work the wheat harvest. I know we're in beef production, but just tell me, here's where I'm trading. You're not going to get dinged for saying I worked the wheat harvest to earn the money for the steer. But if you don't tell me where that steer came from, or pig, goat, horse, whatever the case may be, as a judge, I'm like, okay, mom and dad are paying for all the expenses. This kid's not recording anything, and they're unrealistic finances, and your score's dropping. Same thing. So if you've got a really high earning animal, and totally possible, you could have, you know, that $10,000 steer, that $100,000 donor cow, all of those things are possible. And if you explain them, they're great. If you leave the judge wondering, it's not great. Another key, we saw this, COVID really, we saw this. All of a sudden, these kids were out of school and they worked a lot more hours than normal. So, and there's a worksheet linked in here somewhere, and you can find it on the Proficiency Award webpage about how many hours is full-time work in a normal year. It's 2,080. And that's 40 hours a week for 50 weeks out of the year is 2,080 hours. If you've got a kid telling us they worked 5,000 hours in a year, you better tell us how. If you say, hey, I'm a junior, I'm a full-time student, I also play football, and I'm the chapter president, and I'm the deacon in church or whatever, and you're telling me you're working 5,000 hours a year, I don't care how much I tell judges to take it at face value, they can't believe you. So if you work 16 hours a day, 4 months out of the year at the grain heart, you know, traveling the country, running a combine, great. You're probably going to have more than 2,000 hours. Explain that. Don't just assume a judge is going to believe you when you say you have 3,000 hours, especially if you specifically say, oh, 3,000 hours and everything comes out nice round numbers. Okay. Judges are like, yeah, you're just guessing, kid. And you have no idea how many 3,000 hours is. So additionally, be thinking about what's legal. Now, I know what's legal on a family farm versus what's legal for an outside employer are two very different things. Judges know that, right? So, but again, explain, hey, I work at the family farm. During the summer, I work 7 days a week. Here's what I'm doing. Okay, totally believable, totally understandable. But if you don't explain that, judges can be a little cynical, and it's hard to blame them. Find somebody who knows nothing about your project, maybe even somebody who doesn't know anything about agriculture, and make them your proofreader. So sure, have them check your grammar, have them check your spelling, etc. But really what I want you to do is, after they've gone over all that, so ask them, so what is my project? And if they're like, what? I don't know. Then you probably haven't explained it well. Hey, how did I get that? How did I earn that $100,000? Okay, finances, depends on who you get to proofread it, but ask them questions after they've read it. If they are unsure or can't answer it, look hard at that application and see if you explained it well. And if not, again, my judge from Connecticut may be wondering too. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this one changed last year. So last year's applications were the first ones under this minimum standard. And this is, again, everything I'm talking about is the national level. So at the local level, even at the state level, you could have a different minimum. But when it comes on to national, one of the first things, and this is built into the checklist, you have to have records from 2 calendar years. Now listen closely, because the wording is very important. It does not say you have to have 2 calendar years of records. It does not translate to 24 months of records. Will that be good for you? Yes. Is that bad in any way? No. The minimum is you have to have, the old minimum was you had to have 12 months of records. Well, if you started January 1 and finished December 31, you could get 12 months of records in 1 calendar year. Doesn't happen a lot, but the application, we have no way to count the number of months you worked, because all we see in the application is year-end totals. We don't see month by month. We don't see the record books. Here, I'm going to say that one again, because lots of states include the record books in their judging, which I think is great. At the national level, our judges do not see your record books. They only see the application itself. So we are looking for it this year. If you've only got records from 2022, when we look at the application, and that's the only year there's records in, you haven't met the minimum. It's an automatic participant, and we're done judging. You have to have records from at least 2 years. So 2021 and 2022 at the bare minimum this year. Okay, again, you're going to need more to be actually competitive, but you'll met the minimum if you have some records from 2021 and some records from 2022. Again, with the new constitutional amendment that's been approved, hopefully this will mostly go away. But I know lots of places in Oregon, you have strong 4-H programs. Okay, some of these kids have had projects since they were 8 years old. That's fine and dandy, but the only records you can report to us are from when you joined FFA. So if you've been raising sheep since you were 8 years old and you've got all these records, you're going to start whenever, and your state can set this, and we don't question if you start as a freshman, whether your state says, okay, that means you can start records June 1 or September 1, whatever the case may be. You need to show beginning inventory with all that stuff that you already had. It needs to go in beginning inventory, and don't tell us about how you acquired it 3 years ago. You might give a quick explanation saying, hey, I started my project and all that stuff is in my beginning inventory, because all we want to know is about your growth from the time you started FFA until the time you applied. And that's the biggest thing we're measuring, is your growth and what did you learn in that time period only. We're really sticky about that because we're trying to level the playing field. We're trying to give everybody that basic same chance. So everybody starts when they start FFA, and of course ends on December 31. This is another one that we see. We hate this, but in order to be fair, we have to do it. All applications end on the same day, December 31. So this year, your application ends December 31, 2022. If you include information from 2023, your application is severely penalized. So look at that example there. Okay. I did my application. I competed at the state level. I only have financial records in there up through December 31st, 2022. And then in the description, I say, oh, by the way, I was the Oregon State 23 winner. Well, guess what? You just nailed your application. We're sticky about it because we're trying to get everybody to end at the same time so that, again, we have a level playing field. Your applications sounds like are due in March. Texas's applications aren't due until July. We don't want to give them a competitive advantage by letting them have 3 or 4 more months worth of records. So you're a perfect example of a state with an early convention. This rule benefits you. So don't let it bite you because the kid wants to throw in that they were the state winner, or, hey, I just finished this new training school or whatever. Only put in stuff that had happened before December 31, 2022. The exception is you can talk about future goals and plans. Okay, so if you say in 2024, my goal is to be here, great. But if you tell me in January of 23, I did this, you're going to get penalized. Is that clear? Okay. Group projects. We have school-based or enterprise programs now, okay? So that kids that can use the school to do a group project. By definition, that SAE type has to be a group. Can those kids apply for Proficiency Awards? Absolutely. But they've only got to tell us about their portions. So a few years ago, had an application out of Colorado, 2 sisters. They had a pheasant raising operation. They were 50-50 owners. They did a terrific job of saying, I have a partner, this is my portion, all of the finances, and you can, either way I'm about to say is correct as long as you tell us. I have reported all of the finances for this project. I am a 50% owner, okay? That tells the judge, you showed us 100%, but 50% is actually yours. Or you can simply say, I'm reporting my 50% worth only in this application. Again, either way is fine as long as you tell us. If you tell us about all these earnings and expenses and great stuff, and you keep mentioning your partner and you never explain which way you're doing this, now you've got a judge wondering, so is this your project or are you reporting the whole group? And anytime a judge is wondering, it's not helping your score. Okay, if you've left a judge wondering, it's not going to improve your score. So again, just explain what portion you're reporting and don't tell us about what your friend learned. Tell us about what you learned, the skills you developed. Don't tell us about other people's stuff. Please don't get caught with plagiarism. We run a computerized program. This is not subjective, folks. This is not subjective at all. We have a computerized program. It goes through these applications. It compares 50 character strings, and we get a report. So if we're bouncing you about plagiarism, we're not saying that your application is similar to. That application exactly matches a fair portion of somebody else's application. Siblings are the worst. And I'm not saying they're really trying to be mean or nasty or cheat. But my older sister, won this last year, and we have the same project. I'm just going to copy out of her application. Well, I copied the entire efficiency section. Well, guess what? The computer is going to pick that up and we're going to disqualify the application. The computer gives us a report. We go through, and so it's always humans making the decision, but the computer is what's picking things up and telling us to take a look. Out of roughly 1,300 proficiency applications, less than 100 does the computer find anything in. So this is not picking up similar. This is you cut and pasted something. And we've seen it to where they cut and paste, you can see the exact same punctuation error and spelling error. I mean, it gets pretty dang obvious. I know if this happens to you, you as a teacher have an awful hard time knowing what the kid did. I am not blaming you. If this happens to one of your kids, you are not on the list of blackballed forever. You're the horrible teacher who's trying to get their kids to cheat. We know how this works, okay? But help your kids understand. An example that you're showing them is to show them how to do it, not to cut and paste from. I do get this question though, this last one about you can reuse your own work. So if you did a beef production application last year and you want to use some of that work in your diversified livestock application next year, fine, cut and paste all you want. You cannot plagiarize yourself. And the computer knows is set for that too. So if it's your own work, you copy it and paste as much as you want. As soon as you copy and paste somebody else's, it's going to get caught. Okay, specifically in accounting. Again, remember, the judges don't know anything except what you have in that application. Number one question, wow, this kid's got a lot of assets being shown here, but I cannot figure out where they came from. Okay, tell us. If you inherited a greenhouse from grandpa because he retired and he said, all right, it's yours, make sure it shows there as a gift and tell us as part of how you started the project. I inherited a greenhouse. Great, questions answered. I understand why you have a greenhouse. But if you've got a greenhouse and a lawn tractor and all this other stuff, and there's nowhere in there does it show up until the ending inventory, and we can't find an expense for it, your financial portions are going to get nailed hard. So make sure that it's clear where things came from, both in the finances and simply in your written explanations. You can still have a quality proficiency project and have lost money on the project. I know that some people will think that's nuts. The financial sections, we're not scoring how much money you made. We're scoring, did you do it correctly? So the kid that made $100,000 and the kid that made $1,000, if the kid that made $100,000 has a bunch of financial errors, he's going to score way worse than the kid that made $100. The scores are not based on how much you made. They're based on, did you learn the principles and did you account for things properly? That's what we're scoring. Again, I've already hit this about whole round numbers. Just don't let kids guess in here. They should have real live records to back these up. And we've already talked about unusually high placement hours. This is the worksheet I was talking about that walks you through, how many hours are normal in a year. Okay, photo pages. A lot of people spend a lot of time on this section of the application. Each one of those photo pages is worth 1 point. Now, I don't say that to discourage you from doing a good job, but people get all bent up and like, oh man, if I could just collage, here's a before and after. If I can collage those together on this one page, it'll really tell the story. Well, you can put one photo per page. If you want to show me a before and after, great, that's 2 pages. As soon as you collage it or combine it, and again, it's one file, I'm going to put it that way, or one photo, not one file. If you go on the computer and combine 3 photos into one file, you're going to get nailed. Okay, it's 1 photo per page. Don't worry about putting fancy borders on them. None of that matters. It doesn't get you any points, and it can potentially get you nailed if you do something wrong. It doesn't add any points. Make sure the photos are of your own things. We had the DQ an application because the kid says, here is my tractor that we do all this work with. And I had a judge go, man, squeaky, brand new, $100,000 tractor. Did a quick Google on his phone. Guess what? The first thing when you Google John Deere tractor, guess what the first picture is that pops up? Well, it's off the dealership page. That kid was DQ'd because he claimed this is my tractor that we do the work on, but yet that's not what he showed us. He showed us somebody else's equipment. Here's another one to plan ahead. Take those pictures throughout the years and throughout the project. A picture, here's this kid, and we see this all the time. We laugh about this, but it's a good thing. We've got 6 photos, and we're like, man, is this the same kid? And it's because this photo's of them as a freshman starting their project, showing us what they did. And now here's a photo of them, and they've been out of high school since they graduated in June. And, their hair color's changed, and they're 50 pounds high, a foot taller and 50 pounds heavier. That's great. That shows us that you've been keeping track of things. When we see all 6 photos, the kid's got the exact same clothes on and looks the exact same. Again, it's better than nothing, but it's not as good as a record showing us your progression. Telling the kid to change their shirt between each photo, sure, go for it. Try it. And again, we're not going to penalize you for it, but just know we're not dumb. Okay. Professional photos is a big deal. Sorry, pop back up there real quick. I would strongly encourage you not to use them at all. And what I mean by professional photos is if it has a watermark on it, we know that somebody else took that picture. And in order for you to be able to include it in the application, you have to tell us that. You have to attribute it. Okay. I used to use this as an example, but it's kind of blurry. I have a photo, and it literally, this young lady, it's a professional photo. She's running the barrels on a horse. She's got this horse laid out, and she's screaming around these barrels. And right across the photo, it says draft, stolen from JXY Photography. Okay, she illegally downloaded the photo from the photographer without paying for it, put it in her application. A, it's illegal. We're not going to reward that. And B, I dang sure can't get caught putting one of those up on the national stage. Okay, so if there's a watermark or a photo on it, somewhere in that caption, preferably, you need to specifically say, I purchased this photo. I own this photo. I'm using this photo with permission. You have to attribute that professional photo. They don't get you any extra points, folks. The one you took with your phone and added in is just as good as the one that the professional photographer took. What we care about is what are you shown doing? What we're judging you on what you did, not the quality of the photo. As long as we can tell what the photo is, I don't care whether it's 8 bajillion megapixels or 72, as long as we can clearly see the photo. And on those captions, that's really what's getting the points. If you tell me, if here's you and you've got that needle out, you're about to vaccinate that pig, don't have the caption say, here's me vaccinating a pig. I can see you're vaccinating a pig. In the caption, tell me why. I'm using X number of cc's of this medication because I ran the studies and said, here's the best thing to treat this disease. Tell me about all the stuff you learned in the caption. That's what gets the points. Okay, roll on. The supplemental information. Again, some people have not, we changed this 2 years ago. This will be the 3rd year. There is no longer a 1-page limit. Okay, there is not a page limit on the supplemental information. It used to be the personal page, and it was 1-page limit. We took that off. I think we changed it to supplemental, 4 years ago. We took the 1-page limit off. I believe it was 3 years ago. I don't want to see your prom photos. I don't want to see your yearbook photo. I don't want to see anything about you. I want to see about your project. It's a great, you can use this material really well. You know, hey, I claimed my $25,000 horse in there, and judges are like, oh, okay, whatever. Well, boom, there's the purchase price of the horse, and here's an insurance policy showing the horse being insured. Wow, okay, great. You just took all my doubts away. An SAE agreement, again, can explain all kind. Hey, I'm doing all this bartering with dad. That's why I don't have any expenses. Oh, here's an SAE agreement showing exactly what the kid told us. Makes breeding papers, deeds. Hey, I own 1,000 acres. You own it, or you claim to own it and your dad owns it. Nope, here's the deed in my name. Great. You just took all the doubt away. So these supplemental information pages can be super helpful, or they can be whatever. So really think about using them well. Next. I'm gonna go through these quickly. You all have access to all the rubrics. We have no secret rubrics. We tell you exactly, here's the rubrics that the judges use. That's what we use. All of them are available to you. Last year we did implement, we used it for the first time. Again, we told everybody ahead of time, and we used it for the first time. We did implement a new rubric for the interviews. So if you're a finalist, we now have a rubric for that interview. Again, it's available to you. That's what we're using, so that your kids and you always know, here's what we're looking for. This is my shameless plug. You really want to learn how to do Proficiency Awards? Come judge. And this is online. You're staying at home. We give you like 10 days to go through the applications, but you'll get to see 20 to 30 applications. You'll see some terrific examples. You'll see some horrible examples. You'll get some new ideas. You'll go, oh, I never thought of doing it that way. You can simply sign up. Last year, we needed, between the 3 programs, we needed almost 900 judges. So we're shameless plug to do it, but it's incredibly helpful to you as a teacher to know what to do for applications. I think that's yep, there we go. Gotta take a breath. I talk too fast.
That was good. That was good. Hopefully we left enough time for questions. We don't have that many people on, but I do have Joe here to talk about National Agri-Science Fair if you have questions for him. We also have Brett here to answer any questions from his presentation or any other questions. And I did invite Kathy Mayfield, but I think she had something else she had to jump onto. She's gonna join us maybe if Lee will let her in. But I don't know if any of you, Gretchen or Lynn, have questions for us tonight. Okay. Well, I'm going to take that as a no. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And Joe, maybe we'll talk again at another time and do something on agri-science and maybe invite your colleague. Okay, we got a chat saying no questions. All right, I hope the information was useful. I learned some things, so I appreciate your time, Brett. And I think with that, we're gonna go ahead and close early unless someone else has something they want to share.
I'll just say, while we've got the time, if you've got a specific question on, hey, I'm working on this application, hey, I'm willing to answer. I'm sure Joe would do the same for his, so yeah, take advantage.
Yes, happy to help.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time, guys. And join us. I think it's in 2 weeks. We'll have another AgChat. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but we can look at the calendar and feel free to jump on and join us.
The next one will be a project visit tour with Sherwood High School.
Awesome. Okay. Well, good night, everybody, and thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.